and welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today, we are here with Chief Harris with the Seat Pleasant PD in Maryland, 16 years of law enforcement experience. Welcome to the show, Chief Harris.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Excited to have you. You've built a reputation around leadership. Let's talk about a little bit of your development and how you got there, where you started.
So the great thing about where I am now, I actually started my career in the same county. I started my career with the sheriff's office, the Prince George's County Office of the Sheriff, and I stayed there quite a few years. And that's where it started. That's where my heart has always been. And then not too long after being a deputy, I actually got the opportunity to. I met a mayor during a community event, and she was actually looking for a chief of police. And we were just talking in general about the some of the things that I've experienced in law enforcement, and I was actually helping her put together a panel to look for a chief. And through that process, we were talking, and she said, "I would love for you to apply." And I was shocked. And at that time, at that time I was only 30. I did apply, and I got the job. And so I became a chief at a small municipality called Edmiston, right here in Prince George's County. And that's kind of where my leadership as a chief started. And I stayed there for a little while before being asked to come to Sea Pleasant. When I first joined Sea Pleasant, I was asked to come as a deputy chief of police. And so they were having I don't like you'll notice that I don't like the word problems. I always say opportunities. So they were having some opportunities. And the chief at the time had asked me to come over to kind of get things together with the patrol operations. And so after quite a few meetings, I eventually agreed. I came over, and eventually he moved on, and I became the chief here in Sea Pleasant. I've been in Sea Pleasant now going on 6 years.
Seems like you climbed up the ranks pretty quickly.
Very quickly.
There
Very.
any is there anyone that you can speak to as far as a leader goes that got you to where you are now today?
I would say that there have been so many, but there were also people outside of law enforcement that were great influencers to me. I will say that before I became entitled a leader, I was always a leader, and even at the sheriff's office, I would take trainings, even as a sick leave. I would use my own leave, and I remember one of the first trainings I signed up for. I flew to Florida and went to FBI Leader, their supervisors institute, and I was not a supervisor, but I applied for the course because I knew that one day I wanted to lead. And I didn't know that at the time God would catapult me so quickly to these roles. But what happened was is that I would take these. Me and a buddy of mine would go and take these courses because we were just so interested not on where law enforcement was, but where law enforcement was going. And they were teaching concepts that I had never heard, and they were teaching new policing tactics and things like that. And so I started going, and I wasn't even in charge of nothing. And I was just really interested in it. And so I do read a lot. I read a new book almost every 30 days. And so I was reading so much, and I was just downloading a lot. And so when I was asked to be on panels, and I was asked to give insight on policing in general, I just kind of referenced the things that I had learned. And that's kind of how I got here.
Always be curious. Always can keep learning. That's what we say. Would you attribute that to just reading the books, attending different seminars?
Absolutely, absolutely. Always take the time. No one can invest into you like you. I would say that. And so if you take the time to invest into yourself, you'll see the fruits of that labor. A seed has to grow, right? So you plant that seed inside yourself, and you can't continue to water it. It has to grow, and you'll see what happens with it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's such great insight.
I love the grass is green where you water it
Mhm.
because I think so often we look at the other side of the fence and we think that the grass is greener, but for you to say, hey, the grass is green where you water it, we just got to plant those seeds, I think is a powerful message. I also like that, and I think it's important to kind of circle back to what you said about how you can be a leader without a formal leadership title. I think that's an important reminder for everyone to know that you don't have to be a supervisor to be a leader. And I guess my question for you is, what do you think is the greatest leadership skill or lesson that you've learned so far, whether you were, an informal or formal leader?
I would say the the one thing I would stand out is being courageous.
Mm,
And so a lot of people think that having the badge is what makes you courageous, but it's actually the work that you do. And it's not just in our patrol operations. It's not just, it's really being courageous and making sound decisions and being courageous and remembering that decisions that you make impact somebody,
mm,
no matter who it is. And so one of the things that I always tell my staff is that um, they get on me because a lot of people don't know that I'm actually ordained. I'm a licensed minister. And so one of the things I always tell them is that the first thing God told Joshua was to be courageous. It wasn't to go into the promised land, it was be courageous and know that I'm with you. And so no matter where you are in life, you be courageous of where you are, because where you are is preparing you for where you're going. So be
mm.
courageous in that process, and watch where it takes you.
I also, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think that courage is also stepping outside of your comfort zone and not being afraid of failure or um, being judged by other people. I think it goes back to what you said before about continuously learning. Some people are afraid of that. They're afraid of being new at something or sucking at something or, people judging them for being new. And so having the ability to, put yourself out there, apply for the chief position when you're 30 years old, even though you don't know if if it's the time because, maybe everyone else wasn't getting it until they were in their 40s. And so having the courage to take risks and not being afraid of failure, I'll put that in quotes because I love that you said opportunities, not problems. And I also think in the same way it's failures are opportunities for growth and advancement. And so I don't know if anything is really a failure. So
I like that. I love that actually. I'm gonna have to
thank
use
you. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
What's that saying? The fear of fail, like to have the fear of failure or to like not try at all. There's a saying, something like that. Anyways,
Yeah.
um, you've built this team, and what qualities do you look for when you're looking for a future leader or someone just to be there to help guide your team?
So surprisingly, and this goes to even when I'm interviewing new applicants, people think that they assume I'm going to meet the chief, I'm in the final stages of the process, and I want to talk about all this policing stuff. I care nothing about that. And so the reason is because we're going to teach you how to be a officer in Sea Pleasant. We're going to teach you, give you all the skills. We're going to teach you how to be tactical. We're going to teach you about how to use the tools in law enforcement. One of the things I can't teach you is how to be a good person. That's
Mm,
something you got it or you don't. And so they're surprised when they come in here and I'm asking them about, tell me the last book you read. Because real leaders are readers, right? We learned that in FBI Leader. We learned that through SMIP. We learned that through Northwestern School of Public Safety Leadership. Leaders are readers. And so I want to know the last book you read. And I want to know about your family because we know that in law enforcement that it's not just you that makes these sacrifices. It's going to be your family too, right? And so, what people don't know is that when a person leaves my office, if they leave with a book, they're hired. If they don't leave with a book, they better go back to the drawing board, right? Because they're not ready. And so, what I give them a book is I usually give them either the 17 Infallible Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, or I give them Start with the Why. And so one of the I want to know about you. I want to know about, do you have balance in your life? Can you really take on what it takes to wear this uniform? When you're out here working, we're scheduled for 10-hour shifts in patrol, but them late lockups, them late times you have to assist people. You're here 14 hours. Are you prepared for that? Is your family prepared for that? And what I look for is just your character. You know, because everybody's gonna say when you're talking to a chief, you're gonna say whatever you think I want to hear, right? Because you're in the interview process, right? But I really want to know who you are as a person. I want to know your heart.
mm,
Everything else we're gonna teach you, but I want to know who you are as a person because I need to make sure that, you know, if you get into a shooting, if you get into an incident, they're not calling you. Guess who they're calling? Me. Guess who's on the news? Me. And so making sure that when you wear this badge or you wear these patches, you represent me and you understand like my vision and where I'm going. And that's one of the things in my career that I always thought was important. Like I love the sheriff's office, but I didn't know their vision. And so when I met with the sheriff on my exit interview, I told him that. I said, I knew what we were working, but I didn't know what we were working towards. I didn't know the goals. And he had this whole plan. I said, but the line didn't know. So I want to make sure each person understands the vision, understands my heart, and so I can understand theirs, and then we invest into that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, it does.
100%. I want to share a story that I think it relates to this. When I was first starting working with law enforcement, I was having a meeting with a chief, and he looked me in the eye and was like, "Tell me your story." And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm perfect. Everything's good, like everything's great, like you know everything." And he was like, "No, first of all," he's like, "I'm a cop. It's my job to do research on you." So he's like, "I don't take calls with people, who I don't do research on first." He's like, "So I already know a little bit." He's like, "But I want to hear from you." It was the first time someone in the law enforcement profession took the time to ask me who I was and where I came from. And it was really, I think in the moment, it was scary for me to like open myself up and talk about some of those things that I had gone through and who I was because I was so used to surface level. I wasn't used to going there. But it's always a moment I'll remember. And I really felt like in that moment he cared about me and I really appreciated that. And so I guess my question for you is, do you think by doing that and showing people that you genuinely care about who they are and where they came from and their family, that helps with retention and that helps with wellness because now the people walking into your organization feel like they're seen by leadership?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of larger agencies can't do that. In some cases,
Mhm.
when you're managing 2,000 people, you may not have the opportunity to talk to the chief, right?
Sure.
But here in a small municipality, we're all about community. We're all we got. And so we have to have those relationships. And to be honest with you, it's not fake. This is who I am as a person, right? I genuinely care about the people here. I grew up right around the corner. My grandmother's house is still around the corner. My family is still in the area, and so we have deep roots here. And so I care about who we're investing into. Who's responding to these calls, right? I care that I want to know that you care about people, that we're
Mm.
people centric. You don't have to have all the answers. I don't want anybody that has all those answers, right? But I want somebody who will take the time to understand that when people call 911, it's usually because all hell's breaking loose and you have to be the guardian of peace here. And so how do you go into a hellish situation and build peace? How do you do that without putting fuel on the fire? And so making sure that you can do that and we give you the tools to be successful to do that. But I genuinely care. Like you'll see me walk in the city in the morning. You'll see me sitting on somebody's porch talking to them, right? And that's why I love municipal government. I love small municipal government because we just have those relationships. And then when something does happen, these people got your back. These residents have your back. And so it's just about caring about people and being people centric. Everything we do should tie back into an outcome that affects a person or people and whether it's our businesses or our residents.
Yeah, and I think you guys have such a unique opportunity in your profession specifically to have a positive impact on people's lives and the trajectory of their lives. And it's something that a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And I think a lot of people seek that. I talk to a lot of people that want to have that deeper reason why they do what they do. And you guys every day have the opportunity to positively impact people's lives. So I think it's something to remember for anyone who's in the profession, a reminder, but especially the young people coming in, it's like you have such a huge opportunity to do good.
So
Thank you.
Is this something that you've wanted to do your whole life, or has things shifted and you started to care more over time as you got deeper into the profession?
I'll be honest with you. When I was in elementary school, I used to I remember telling one of the teachers that I was either going to be a preacher or I was going to be a police officer, right? And because I remember it just being my passion, right? And so I always knew that I kind of wanted to do some level of service. Going into ministry and serving where I serve now, I learned so much about what ministry really is, and the term minister is derived from the word minister, meaning to serve. And so I used to always think that when you're in ministry, you have to be on a pulpit. And the reality of it is, when we serving, all of us are serving in our ministry in some type of way. It has nothing to do with the building. And so this happens to be my ministry, right? To serve where I am. And so that's how it started and
Yeah.
that's how it's continued.
Yeah. And I know your profession does sometimes demand authority. How do you balance that out? and add in some of the humility that comes along with it.
So I believe that we can still do our jobs, but we don't have to disrespect you. Or we can still do our jobs and we don't have to I always reference the Maryland State Police, right? I love the Maryland State Police, right? Because they always instill the look. They always instill their presence. And even if they have to fold you up, guess what? They're calling you sir or ma'am the whole time. And
Mm.
so the worst people get should be the karma we should get because the average citizen doesn't have the training that we've been to. They haven't been through an academy like we've been through. And so we have the training, we have the knowledge, we have the experience. And so I expect us to just still respect people in the process. Yeah, you might get this ticket, but that doesn't mean that I'm belittling you or disrespect you in the process. And so we try to instill that as much as possible in our officers. And some of these situations, you all know, can be extremely intense. And so we try to make sure that we're as realistic as possible when in our training and in our development of our staff.
And to me, when you say that, that's emotional regulation, and that has to do with wellness. It's like, how do we um, control our breathing? How do we control our mindset? How do we control our actions and our reactions? Which is, in my opinion, a trainable skill. And it sounds like that's your opinion as well. You also said something earlier that I referenced, but I want to bring it back up that you said that there's opportunities, not problems. And that's mental training as well. And so a lot of the things you're talking about fall within the wellness realm, mental training, emotional regulation. I know that wellness is something that's a priority for you guys within your organization. Can you talk a little bit about maybe why wellness is so important to you, when that became a part of the conversation?
It actually has always been kind of my thoughts, right? Because I felt like there's so much research out there that shows that because of the job that we do, the situations that we deal with, our highs are higher, which also will reference means our lows are lower. And so what I wanted was an agency that was well balanced. I wanted an agency that we invested into people, into our officers. We provide free mental health for our officers here who may need it. We actually one of the things was when I first started, we couldn't hire a lot of people because the salaries were so low here, right? We invested into a trainer to come, 3 or 4 days a week, and we provide overtime if those officers attend. And so we're sending people before we even send people in the academy, we're hiring them early and having them with their trainer to get ready for the academy. So it's holistic, right? It's not just it's mind and body to make sure that you are as whole as we possibly can make you before you put this uniform on and go out on those streets and providing those resources, which was very uncommon when I first started in law enforcement. They weren't doing these things. But what we found was is that people were dying early. A lot of officers dying early, and so and a lot of officers were committing suicide,
Mhm.
even on the job or even right after retirement. And I think I read a statistic a couple of years ago that the average officer after retirement, a lot of them were dying. A certain percentage was dying just after 5 years after retirement. And to think a 20-year career, a 25-year career, and people are starting at 21, and so you're only in your 40s, and people are dying after you gave all this time to this career. And honestly, that's not fair. So
Mm.
what can we do to make sure that you enjoy your retirement? What can we do to make sure you enjoy the time that you're here? And what can we do to invest into you to make sure that we get a return on our investment, but you also get something out of the deal too? That's kind of my thought on it, and that's what I wanted as an officer. That's what I wanted as a deputy. I wanted people to care about me. I wanted people to understand that what it was like to build a family, what it was like to have children in this field. What was it like to work 14, 15-hour day and put this uniform on and to really understand it. And a lot of times we sit in these roles for so long, we forget about the people that actually are doing the work. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that type of chief. I want to understand. I want to know so that we can make positive change where we possibly can.
Yeah, and your people are your greatest asset. And I love that when you said like the ROI and remembering that it's about the people. But it also sounds to me like you also remember where you came from, which keeps you connected. And I think that that's really important. We all have to remember what it was like to do these things. I just did a presentation with a room full of chiefs, and a lot of them were like, "Yeah, I haven't worked shift work in a million years." It's like, but we got to remember what it was like. Like, what was it like to work shift work? What were some of those challenges that you saw? And then how can you, now that you're in a position of formal leadership, be able to invest in your people so that they have it easier than you did? And then when they get to the end of their career, hopefully, maybe there's some bumps and bruises that happen along the way, but hopefully there is whole or even better when they leave the career than when they started.
So,
Thank you.
And you had mentioned to not only the emotional, and what goes along with the emotional is the balance and having to be able to get out and be with your family and not be so drained from the day to day of the job. How have you found that balance in your own life?
and so I believe that I have three boys, right? And so I refuse to build a community and lose a family.
Mm,
And that's just what it comes down to. I know what it's like to me and my father have a great relationship now, but I know what it's like to not grow up with your dad always around. And so I refuse to be that person, right? I refuse to be that person to talk about community and not represent it properly in my own household because that's where it starts. And so I'm intentional about who I am as a man. I'm intentional how who I am as a father. And so, I work very hard, right? And we work a lot of long hours, but I make sure I'm home. We have like a good night song that we do with the boys, and I make sure that I'm there for that. I make sure that I'm present and that I'm meeting them at their need. And so I'm not just talking about it. I'm an example of what it looks like. And don't get me wrong, it is not easy. It is not easy. But I just really believe in this. I just really believe in that balance, right? Because I think that makes me good. Like, I like music. A lot of people don't know this. I DJ on the side, right?
Did not
So
know that.
I love
but
that.
I started DJing as therapy because I just like music and I was having long days working and I decided to start listening to music and then I started taking little classes here and there. It was all for fun. Now I'm doing whole parties, right? And people think, oh, we're hiring him for the service, but it's really therapy for me because I enjoy that. And so I found those things that I like to do and I make sure I make time to do it.
Mm.
Well, and it's important. You not only are you getting something out of it, but the people you're providing for are getting something out of it too. So it's a win-win.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's pulling on my heartstrings over here. I was like getting misty-eyed for whatever reason, but I didn't have active parents in my life. And I'm expecting my first baby right now. I'm gonna have a little girl and thank you. Um, and it's put a lot of things in perspective. And I've had those conversations with myself and with my partner of, you know, I know what it's like to not have these things. And so it makes me want to do those things even more for my family. And so I love that you said I refuse to do these things and these are non-negotiables for me. And I think we all have to sit with ourselves at different parts of our lives and our careers and reassess what's important to us. Who do we want to be? Who do we want to show up as? How how can we get there? Like, what are the things we need to do to be successful to get there? And I think it's all about priorities and reassessing what our priorities are. And sometimes I think we get so lost in the grind of things that sometimes we lose sight of the things that are the most important. So that was pulling on my
Yeah.
heartstrings a little bit too, because that's my life right now, is like, how can I be the best mom and partner that I possibly can be, and how can I build a successful family? So I appreciate you saying that.
The fact that you're even thinking about it proves that you're going to be a phenomenal mother.
Thank you. I
She is.
appreciate that. Like,
The
don't
fact,
make me cry.
fact that you're even having those considerations means that you're in a great position, right? You're in a great position, and God is going to do something really great to the birth of your child. And I can just see it. It takes people think that it's this large scale things that will change the world, but it
Mm,
really is going to start with us right in our homes, and
yeah,
that's what's going to make a difference.
thank you. I appreciate that. Have you heard the starfish story?
I have not.
Um, I like this a lot because it's this idea of, because I do think that we all want to change the world. And I think as we mature, we understand that, maybe we can't change the world, but we can change someone's world, or we can have a small, piece of that change. But there's a story about this little boy. He's walking on the beach, and there were millions of starfish that washed up on shore. and he's tossing them back in. And this fisherman was like, "What are you doing, kid?" And he's like, "I'm saving these starfish, I'm saving their lives. I'm tossing them back in." And the fisherman goes, "Well, you can't save them all, right?" And he goes, "That's okay, just one at a time." And so I try to think of that. It's like, how can we make small incremental changes and steps forward in our life to be successful, understanding that it's one step at a time. So I like that you said it starts with us. It starts with what we're doing in our own household, and then it expands from there.
You're giving me some great material that I'm gonna have to use.
Thank you.
Great.
I'll I'll regress.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It's just one small thing that you do in a day. And I was just having a conversation the other day, and it's not about necessarily being the best, but it's about how you make other people feel and
Mm.
letting them know that they're important and they matter too.
Yeah. I did want to talk about one other thing before we run out of time. I did want to talk a little bit. Technology is something that is important to you and something that you leverage within your organization. Can you talk a little bit more about that and some of the things that you're doing in the technology space?
So one of the great things about Sea Pleasant, we consider ourselves a smart city, right? We actually our logo says the Smart City of Excellence. And what that means is that we use the Internet of Things and technology to make the lives better of the stakeholders that we impact. And
Mm,
so a lot of times we don't even say residents because we say stakeholders because we have over 1 million cars that come through Sea Pleasant every day to Washington, D.C. And so we know those are stakeholders, right? Those are people who impact our community every day. And so when you're a stakeholder, you have a vested interest in outcomes. And so we want to make sure that we're using technology to their advantage. The technology is here. We're using open AI and so many different other technology platforms. But where does that fit into policing? And how do we make lives better for our residents? And so we're using some phenomenal technology. We're using Star Chase, where, before we can have to get into a serious chase, we can shoot a dart out of our car that gives us GPS coordinates of where the car is. So we're chasing felony vehicles, and we're actually saving lives, right? Or preventing the potential of crashes. We have the grappler, and so we're using that technology. We have our drone technology, but we also have technology we have a Sea Pleasant app where residents can directly communicate to us. And so about areas of opportunity where we need to address. But using technology or figuring out where technology is going and making sure that we're not behind it, but we're right there with it, understanding it, and making sure our residents don't get left behind in the process. If that makes sense. And
yeah.
so all about technology. So we're sending people through courses, all types of stuff on AI, AGI, and just where the world is going in technology to make sure that we're right there to meet those needs.
Yeah. Well, and if you're not staying with the times, you're behind, right? So, how do you feel like technology plays into officer safety and officer wellness as a whole?
So we should do, as a leader, I should do everything in my power to make their jobs easier and make sure the process is as easy as possible. And so investing into them. One of the things that a few years ago we invested into like GPS monitoring into all our vehicles, right? And so when I was a rookie officer, I would say, well, they just want to watch us. But what I learned is that it's not even about that. What I learned is that when you are in patrol and I'm getting questions about, oh, have we seen officers or officers patrolling our streets? I can use that GPS coordinates. And I say, well, actually, we were on your block 800 times in the last 30 days. And so
Mm,
we're doing retail patrol. So we're using the technology for better deployment. And so, a lot of people talk about CompStat. CompStat was started in the 80s, right? And people are still using it, but really it's dated. It's dated, right? Where the hotspot gets all the attention. If we are using the technology to our advantage now, we can better deploy and we can be predictive in our policing analytics. We can be intelligence led, right? And so we can deploy better, and then we can leave the strain off our officers trying to figure it out. We know where it's at, right? We know what we need to do, and we impact it that way because the data we have data that supports it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
No problem.
With that, what words of wisdom do you have for our younger generations?
If I was to give words of wisdom to our younger generations, I would always say the same thing I tell applicants: be courageous in your path. Where you start is not where you finish, and always focus on what's next. Invest into yourself and let God do the rest.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on here. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I've listened to so many of the interviews. I really enjoyed it.